We are pleased to invite the second keynote speaker, Mr. Carlos Alexandre Prìncipe Pires, Director of Ministry of Mines and Energy, MME in Brazil. The MME is a Brazilian government ministry responsible for fostering investments in mining and energy-related activities, funds research, and set out government policies. The MME has implemented the Brazil-Japan Energy Conservation Project as main counterpart of Brazil government.
Ohayou gozaimasu. Good morning, everybody. Bom dia a todos que nos honram.
Good morning, everyone, honoring us with their presence. As it was said before, my name is Carlos Alexandre. I'm the Director of Energy Development of the Ministry of Mines and Energy. I'll try to show you today a framework of how Brazil has dealt with energy efficiency and why we understand that this is so important for our future. We know that the consumption in industry is responsible for 21% approximately of our GDP in Brazil. And even so, it's still 1/3 of the energy consumed in the entire country. But as you can see, in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, it's only responsible for 8% of the emissions. It is globally known that in Brazil, emissions are concentrated mainly in the use of the land and deforestation, and because of that, especially of an energy matrix that is very clean, we are very proud to set an example to the world and show that our emissions in the industry are very reduced as compared to the rest of the world. Our industry is very heterogeneous. We have an industrial park where small and mid-sized industry represent almost the totality. 99% of the companies are small and mid-sized companies, and on the other hand, they represent 47% of our GDP, industrial GDP, and they are responsible for approximately 16% of our total employment in Brazil. Here, just to give you an example, 1/3 of the consumption energy in Brazil is by the industry and transportation, agriculture, farming. What we can observe is that we have a huge challenge ahead of us, because the main challenge of Brazil is to grow. It is said in the media, in the press, on our day-to-day, it's very common to hear that our GDP is not growing, that our GDP has been reduced over the last few years, but that we have a need of growth because we are a country that is still under development. And when we see the figures of energy planning, we see that Brazil still has a huge effort to do so that by 2030 we double our energy offer. But when we see these figures of industrial growth and growth of the energy consumption, we see that the industry sector is one of the sectors that is going to contribute the most for this increased demand, because it's a continuous increase. It's a need of industrialization or even reindustrialization in some sectors, and this will have an impact on energy consumption. So how can we do this as best as possible? We have in our planning the certainty that it is precisely in the industrial sector the greatest potential for energy conservation. Can you hear me well? So we see the greatest potential for energy conservation in the industrial sector. Here, another representation of how the small and mid-sized companies are subdivided in Brazil. I'd like to point out only that in the point of view of the government, the programs that have been implemented, and I'll have the opportunity to explain this better during my presentation. We have programs that include not only small and mid-sized companies, but also large companies. As my colleague mentioned, Rodrigo, the Alliance program, and we are very proud to participate in it with resources of the Energy Conservation Program. And we'll have the opportunity to talk about the More Productive Brazil program implemented by our colleagues of the Ministry of Industry and Foreign Trade and Services. And these two programs are essential because they can comprehend the entire range of industries that we have in Brazil. And I point out the industry is very heterogeneous. When we deal with energy efficiency, we have to try to see all of the direct and indirect benefits of energy efficiency. The most obvious objectives in terms of energy efficiency are obviously energy gains. There is no need to explain that further, since by consuming less energy for producing the same level, we have immediate gains in delaying investments in new generating parks, in the transmission of energy, and we all know how much it costs to put an extra megawatt in our generating park. There is an effort by the government and in the private sector, but essentially it's an investment that has to be done to face the need to generate more energy, since the main function of the Ministry of Mines and Energy is to do this bridge between offer and demand. So the more we can make our industrial park efficient, the greater the benefits we'll have in relation to delaying investment. We also see that there are many indirect benefits that in our recent past were neglected by the technical experts, and I include in this group of technicians that didn't have the exact idea, because it's difficult to measure these benefits, but they are very important, and most of the world is considering these studies. Increase of job offer in energy efficiency, it's a very important item of our work. We conducted a study recently in partnership with the German government, and we saw that in order to face the challenges of energy efficiency by 2030, we have to multiply by 3 our efforts. So in addition to jobs, we have benefits in healthcare, although we don't have such a considerable effect as the Western countries. By reducing pollution in major urban centers, our grid, in comparison with many developed countries, is 3 times more renewable. So although this is not an essential issue in the point of view of country, we do have a few issues, and today we are doing an event in São Paulo, and São Paulo obviously is a city where there is a need to reduce pollution and to have a constant monitoring. And the more we can displace the use of fossil fuels from the main urban centers with the use of renewable energies, this meets the needs of improvement of healthcare in Brazil. Finally, the environmental issue, because Brazil has international agreements. It is signatory of many agreements. It was a pioneer, maybe the first country to approve in its Congress the targets of the Paris Agreement, the Paris Treaty, and especially in terms of energy efficiency. We repeated in the treaty whatever had been provided in our law that says that by 2030, some 10% of the energy that we would consume over that year has to be supplied by means of energy efficiency actions. And in my other presentation, we will be able to see that we are halfway through. We were able to save approximately 5% of our energy. We still have halfway to go by 2030. Our potential for the reduction of greenhouse gases are quite significant, and the potential for energy saving in terms of demand by 2026 in our 10-year plan, the plan, national plan of energy. So we have a potential to reduce 17 million tons in equivalent to oil by 2026. Here is a list of the entire legal framework of energy efficiency in Brazil. As I mentioned before, we have our NDC. It's approved by the National Congress, where we are committed to reducing by 37% the greenhouse gas emissions by 2025 in a country that needs to grow continuously in order to achieve the integration of the population that still doesn't have access to basic elements such as sanitation and power. We have 99.5% of the universal use of energy, but we are committed to take energy to places that are very far away in the country. We also have the National Plan of Energy Efficiency, as I mentioned before, has the ambition to save 10% of the energy by 2030. We have the Brazil More Productive Brazil program. We have the renewal plans. We have some multi-sectorial plans, including various sectors, and the main one is the one that brings the more resources. It's a program of the concessionaires coming from a requirement of the law of the year 2000 that provide that 5% of the net operational income has to be invested in energy efficiency programs. This law has been amended in 2016, and part of these resources of energy efficiency, 20% more precisely, has to be displaced to the National Program of Energy Conservation. And a new governance of the program was therefore created, and today we have the participation of the National Confederation of the Industry of ABRAD and ABRASI in the drafting of the annual plans of energy conservation. Recently, we concluded the first year of application of these resources, 120 million reais, and we are towards approving the second year of application of these resources that will total approximately 135 or to 140 million reais for 2018 and 2019. We have a successful labeling program created concomitantly with the National Program of Energy Conservation. We have the National Program of Energy Conservation, and we have a national program for rational use of oil and derivatives, natural gas, created after the Procel, and today has important actions but still needs resources because there is no provision in the legislation anything towards this. But this is a very successful program, and the most successful program is the labeling program within Metro for light vehicles. We are today one of the very few countries, maybe the only country in the world where 100% of the automobile fleet is labeled. And on this label, we have information not only relating to energy consumption, but also of the greenhouse gas emissions for each type of fuel. We also have a program of improvement of energy efficiency in the public sector, and this program is being renewed, and we'll probably have soon, in a few weeks' time, a new publication of a decree, because it's being drafted by the Ministry of Planning, and the Ministry of Mines and Energy is working intensively with the Ministry of Planning to give technical support in the drafting of this efficiency program in the public sector. That is slightly different from what is going to be presented to you today. We have an energy efficiency law that is not as comprehensive as the Japan law. It was enacted in 2001 and approved because of the great appeal in 2001 due to the crisis in the supply. We had a major blackout possibility that didn't happen, but we enacted this law saying that all machines that consume energy in Brazil can be regulated with minimal rates of efficiency. This is maybe the main challenge that we face today, in addition, obviously, to face the entire challenge of the energy efficiency in the industry. But we have to establish minimal rates, and this is a huge challenge because today we wish to incorporate at the Ministry of Mines and Energy, we have the challenge to incorporate machines and equipment of industrial use so that this equipment has a minimal rate of efficiency to give an opportunity for industry in the update of their park to become more efficient and improve their productivity and reduce their energy consumption in their production. And I therefore conclude my talk, and I thank you all for being here, and I'm certain that throughout the day we'll have very productive discussions so that we can act jointly, the industry, the private sector, the public sector, towards improving productivity and improving energy efficiency in our industrial park. Thank you very much. I wish you all a great day.